Welcome to Statistics for Survey, Session 3, Diagrams for a Single Variable, Segment 8, the Ogive. An ogive is like a frequency polygon using cumulative frequencies. It was defined by Kenny in 1939 as the graphs of cumulative frequencies. I'm going to be using a small table as an example where I already calculated the cumulative frequencies. Now, we first need a scale somewhere. And then we'll be using the endpoints of the bins for our horizontal axis point. And we'll be using the cumulative frequencies to actually determine the height for each point. So my first point will be where the x-axis on the horizontal will be 10 and the height will be 3. So that's actually this point. The next one will be at 20. And 15, that's this one, 30 and 25, that will be this one, 40 and 27, that's the last one, will be up here. We can then simply connect each of the dots with each other and we have ourselves an ogive. Some people will actually also draw from 0 to the first one a small line. And don't forget to actually label the vertical axis as cumulative frequencies, or if you're using relative frequencies or percentages, cumulative relative frequencies. Note that since an ogive is using cumulative frequencies or cumulative relative frequencies, the line will almost always show an upward trend, even though their absolute values are actually not all the time increasing. You can spot this a little bit by looking at the steepness of each line segment. So this one is not so steep and the next one is a lot steeper. So that means that the frequencies have actually increased a lot. The next line segment is slightly less steep than the previous one. So the absolute frequencies has dropped a little bit, but are still higher than the ones up here. In the last segment, we have again a very small steepness, so the absolute frequencies actually dropped a lot, even lower than the original 0 to 2 bin. To practice reading these ogives, I have a few examples on the next slides as well. Let's practice reading those ogives by doing a few examples. Here are on the left 4 ogives given, and there are 4 histograms given as well up on the right. We're going to match these two with each other, starting with the upper left ogive, and as you can see, the increase here is actually all the time the same. So if we would have to draw a histogram out of this, we would actually have all the time the same increase, or actually no increase at all, because it's all the time the same. Looking at the histograms, the only one that has this is this one, so these two nicely match with each other. So I'll put them next to each other so that we know those two belong to each other. That's the easiest one. So let's focus on the next one, the lower left one up here. The first value is our starting point, which has a very low increase, so it's not too high. Then there's a small increase because it's steeper than the previous line segment. And then there seems to be quite a strong increase because it's a lot steeper than the previous one. The next one, although slightly less steep than the previous one, is still quite steep, so I'm thinking it's about there. And then there's again a very small, very low steepness, so it drops quite a lot again. And then in the end, it's almost flat again, so just a little drop. So if we would connect the dots here, it looks as if the line is like a bit symmetrical. And if we look at our histograms, the only one that has a similar line is going, if we go here, there's a small increase, there's a big increase, a little drop, a big drop, and another drop. So I would say this one matches that one almost perfectly. So we can put those two also next to each other. The next one up here is a little bit the same as the previous one. It's again a bit tricky, so we have quite a steep increase, then an even higher increase. So let's put that up there. Then we have only a little bit of an increase, and that's pretty low again, and it's even lower than the first one. And again, this one is almost the same, and the next one is almost the same, and the last one is also almost the same. So we have something going like this. Now looking at our histograms, it seems that this one actually has that similar pattern, so those two again probably belong to each other. One more to go. Of course, it's now obvious that the last two also belong to each other, but just to be clear, this one up here is actually the reverse almost of this one if you look carefully. Now it starts with a small increase, so that's a little bit low. And there's a small increase, and this is almost like a straight line. So we have this one times 2. A small increase, a little bit higher again than the previous one. And then a very high one. And that's this line segment. And then still another quite steep one, which is probably around here. So again, connecting the dots, we would get a pattern like this, which indeed is similar to the one last histogram we had up here. So these two also belong to each other. So this is one way you can actually practice and see from an ogive how the matching histogram would actually look like.